Michael Porter, you are up front.
Welcome to UpFront. My name is Tekla, and this is a show for artists by artists. We are here with our very special guest today, Mr. Michael Porter, local North Carolina-based flautist, and we welcome you.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Can you please start off just by telling us a bit about your entree into music as a young person, when you got started? Did you follow parents into this craft and profession, or how did it start for you?
Well, growing up, music was a part of our life. My mother played piano, and at my grandparents' house, there was a picture of my grandfather with his World War I Army uniform on, his doorboy uniform, and he had a trumpet across his lap. And there was always a piano, and after dinner on Sundays, we'd all gather around the piano and sing, all that kind of stuff. And I just grew up doing that. I thought everybody did that. So it was just a natural thing. And at some point, we all had to do, there were 5 in our family, 5 kids, and we always had to do our stint at the piano.
Ah.
And when we got 10 years old in the 5th grade, then you could choose a personal instrument.
Did your mother teach you then at home with the piano?
It started out, well, my mother, because she loved big band music.
Ah.
So she introduced me to music of Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Shirley Scott, and all those people. And that's just what so I imagined myself being in a big band. I used to think I was born too late because, the heyday of the big bands was gone.
Right.
So, but anyway, I would fantasize about, being in a big band, and I jammed with my mother.
Wow.
In the living room, I started out like that.
Was there a church connection to that then, or was it just she loved music and was a musician in her own right?
No, we were always church people too, because my grandmother was the proper church lady, and so we went to a church in Asheville.
Okay.
That's where I was born, but we moved to Charlotte. I was a couple of years old, but I spent the summers in Asheville and down here. So yeah, the church was always singing in the choirs and the glee clubs in school, and that was always music.
Right, okay.
In the 3rd grade, I played one of those plastic, little tin flutophones or something like that.
What happened after that? Did you continue your music education in primary school, and is that what happened, or did you begin to get mentors outside of the family, or what happened next?
Well, actually, there, throughout the community, because I think probably about 1960, I started playing the flute in 61. But in 1960, I saw Reese Williams and the Zodiacs on and they had a #1 hit, and they were from Charlotte.
Yeah.
First time I saw a motorhome, they had one, a brand new motorhome, and that impressed me. So right then I decided when I got 16 years old, I was going to get a red suit in the process and get in a band.
And you did?
That never happened. I never got the process. And, but I was inspired by that moment. I knew what I wanted to become. I knew I wanted to be a music man.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So that's when my journey started.
Wow, so now did you gravitate towards some of the other musicians that were already here at that point, or what happened in terms of, did you begin playing with a small band? What happened next?
Well, mostly it was at school functions.
Okay.
In junior high, we had a pep band. And I remember I was doing a crash course on the saxophone. I went back, I was a vice president of the student council, and I talked to assistant principal and then let me in the instrument room. And I was fumbling with the saxophone. And Johnny Holloway, who was my orchestra teacher, he came in to set up a class. And I thought I was busted, but what he did, he went out and got his horn and gave me a crash course, and gave me enough to make it through the pep rally.
I'm really just found out that you played saxophone, and I found out you played it in a movie. So we can say that for just a minute,
Okay.
but let's get there. But that's why I was surprised, because I'd never known that before. So about you. So this is when you first took up the saxophone.
Yeah, and when I was in the 8th grade.
Wow.
But the thing was, I always knew that, usually, from what I had seen, the flute was an instrument that saxophone players would pick up to show their versatility. And so I didn't want to play the sax so much that people would request that. I was trying to make a name for the flute.
Right, right. And when did you first start with the flute, did you say?
I started in 1961.
Oh, okay. Wow. Great. This is that just tied a connection for me between John Holloway and yourself that I didn't know that. So he was actually your teacher.
He was one of my first mentors. Yeah.
Mentor and teacher, former teacher in the schools. Okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
He was my orchestra teacher because we had he taught orchestra and we had another guy that was the band teacher.
So you were doing big band and you were doing church gospel music, and then
well, not a lot of gospel, because what we did, we were doing mostly the hymns and the anthems,
right.
and all of that stuff, because my grandmother, she stressed reading music. It was all about reading. She didn't like the idea. She didn't like my mother picking up playing stuff by ear. So we had all this sheet music. Still got some of it now.
Wow.
You know, all the Duke Ellington stuff, all the Count Basie stuff.
So you learned both. By
Yeah,
ear.
because I had a ear, that sort of thing. Yeah, because what I wanted to do, I wanted to learn how to play, and I learned about music later.
Right, right.
Because I know a lot of people who, no disrespect for anybody, I know a lot of people who know a lot about music but can't play.
That is true. I think that's true.
And so I never want to be one of those people.
Well, when you started playing, what was your first band? What were some of the bands you played with? Early groups? Did you form your own? I know you have your own now, but
Well, the first band, we had a band in high school. It was called Jimmy and the VIPs. I was one of the VIPs. We had that was a piano, bass, drums, and I played flute. I was the lead guy. And so, you know, that was like, because the flute was starting to come into come on the jazz scene because of Herbie Mann.
right.
And he was the first influence. When I first heard Herbie Mann, I think I wore out 2 of his albums trying to copy everything that he played.
That was the decision that you made. That was going to be your instrument then at that point, or you?
No, what happened was when I was in the 4th grade. I went to, that was a citywide band concert at what's now the Bojangles Arena. That was our Coliseum back then,
Right.
and our only Coliseum. Anyway, and there were about 10 high school bands, and my sister was playing piano. She was in 5th grade, and she was like a little prodigy, and she played sonatina in G, accompanied by a high school orchestra.
Oh my goodness.
And so we went there to check it out, and when all the instruments played, the first thing they played was Star Spangled Banner. And when they got to "And the Rock is Red Glare," I heard the flutes, and I fell in love with the sound of the flute.
Gotcha.
I didn't even know what that was, and then I saw a girl with one. I see, I want one of those.
Gotcha.
And that's how it started.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's talk about your career in music here in Charlotte, because you've been a teacher. You've been you have professional musicianship jobs.
Yes.
And so let's talk about over the years some of the things that that you've done, and then let's go back later on. Let's go back and talk more about your music after a while. But let's talk about what have you done, just sort of the overview of your career, because I know that you've been a minister of music for many years.
Well, after college, I went to North Carolina A&T.
I was going to say, you got to say that.
Yeah,
right.
so
BS in music, right?
That's right.
Right.
Music education. So when I left A&T, came back to Charlotte to kind of settling on the music scene, that sort of thing. And I played with, we had a band, it was called Fungus Blues. It was kind of like Charlotte's version of Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh.
It was a big horn band. We had about 10 pieces, you know, several horns, and, you know, we were kind of all about, we were really ahead of our time.
I'd love to hear that.
And yeah, so we nearly made it. You know, we were like hippies. You know, we had the band house. We had the 2 vehicles. We had the equipment vehicle. We had, and we were making it. We were really making a go for it.
Are there any of the members that you can name still from that you remember?
The only, Stanley Graham was one of the members.
Okay.
Stanley Graham and Fred Mills, who is in Greensboro now.
Wow. Okay. I would love. Do you have? I would love to hear a recording from that. I don't know if you have any, but it sounds like a wonderful time. Where was that? Where was that house at?
The last house we had was on Providential Road, 130 Providence Road. It's a doctor's office now.
We need to take a picture of it. Okay, we're going to just take a listen to some of your music that you've played recently, and we're going to come right back.
Okay.
Michael, you know I always love to hear you play, so that is always a treat. We didn't get to talk on the first half of the show, and for those just joining us, this is UpFront, for artists by artists, and we're here with Michael Porter, flautist, very well renowned in this region and area. But could you tell us about your experiences with sort of the arts world here, in terms of the arts councils and the performing arts centers here in Charlotte? Just give us a little overview of what you've been doing over the years.
Okay, my first one, at Spirit Square, someone wrote a grant. It was called the AIM Ensemble, and American Indigenous Music, because I think the grant writers, they didn't think it would be funded if they used the word jazz, because they thought jazz had negative connotations. I don't know why they thought that.
I've heard that.
But this was called AIM Ensemble, American Indigenous Music. So for 4 days we would rehearse, and we had a very good group. And so that was like a paying to, we get paid to play. And we played shopping centers and, just around town, that sort of thing.
But you were artist in residence, right?
Yeah, but that was before. Then after that, I became artist in residence. I had 5 residences. I was in Gaston County. I have been in Charlotte. I've been in Durham Tech Community College, Wilson Tech Community College, and Fayetteville Tech.
Wow. Well, the one here just in Charlotte lasted 4 years,
Yeah,
a decade almost.
Well,
right?
the one at I was probably pretty close to 30 years at the African American Culture Center.
Right. Okay.
And then the Blumenthal, I did a stint at the Blumenthal in 1999. I started in '99 with the Blumenthal.
And you're still there.
Yes, still in the Artists in Schools program.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, that kind of leads us into the next question, and that would be about your teaching.
Okay.
Because I understand that you've been a teacher too.
Yes.
And multiple instruments. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, when I went to A&T, I went to school to become a musician, and I realized they didn't train musicians; they trained band directors.
Oh.
So I've been a renegade band director, because that's not what I really wanted to do. But I had that pedagogy, the ability to teach people from the beginning. I've had the skills of how to do that. So I taught for a while at Trinity Episcopal School over on First Ward.
Okay.
I taught there, and I was a teacher at of course I did the stuff at the Afro Center, and I was at the Community School of the Arts.
Right.
I taught several years, and that's where.
What instrument did you teach there, or what were you
Well,
teaching?
I taught a flute and woodwind. I was a woodwind person because I had several clarinet players too, and that's where I ran into Adrian Crutchfield. He was one of my students. I'm very proud of him. He performs with Prince now.
I know. How old was he when you ran it? Was he just a kid or
he
teenager?
was 7 years old.
Oh my goodness! So you brought him along.
Yeah. So
very interesting.
I was part
Wonderful.
of his career. Him, developing his musical craft.
That's exciting.
Among with other people, because he went on to Florida State and the whole thing. But it all started right down there at Community School of the Arts.
Oh my goodness, that's great. That's great to hear. Really, actually, very exciting. So there's probably other students. You just named one, but that's an example. But wow, so you've had a big influence here.
And I'm working on my next one now. I have a piano student, a flute student that I'm paying close attention to, and hope that I can. Because what my concept is to turn you on to the music inside of yourself. Because music is inside of yourself, and then you just need a vehicle to express it.
You mentioned that to me before, and I finally think I might understand what you're talking about.
Yeah,
right.
because so that's why everybody has a different style.
Right.
And you can imitate somebody, but you really don't come into your own until you find your own voice.
Right, and you have to hear it before you can sing
or
play.
Okay.
Right.
And you have to figure out what you sound like, discover your sound.
Right.
And then you gravitate toward that, and then let that develop.
Yeah, exciting. You'd be a great teacher. I wish I was taking the flute because I would be running behind you.
Oh, I hear you.
But let's talk about your music now for just a little bit, about your writing music if you write it, and sort of your analysis of what's impacted you. Is it what kind of, in terms of genres, has it been pretty much big band and then some jazz, or is it multiple things? Is there R&B in your work? Is there I think I've heard you play, and I have heard you do some R&B. So what is it? And especially when you write or compose, what?
Well, when I think about it, it's almost like music is music, and there's a different, and rather than to put it, because this is something I learned from Duke Ellington. When Duke Ellington was being interviewed, he was asked what category would he consider his music. And he said his answer was his music is beyond category. because not to be pigeonholed in a particular genre. And I played symphonic music, I played jazz, I played big band, I played church music, and so it just reflects a lot of that. It all depends.
Right.
It depends on what the situation calls for.
And what you want to do with it.
Right. Well, in other words, the statement you want to make at the time.
Yes.
If I'm making if it's churchy, I try to make a church statement. But at the same time, my soul, my Michael Porter sound, whatever that is, I want you to hear that through whatever medium I'm expressing it.
Gotcha. That's brilliant. Can you tell me about your writing? In terms of writing music. I know you say you've composed some songs, and can you give us an example of one that you worked on or that you really love? And
one in particular. Two. A project I did some years ago. My daughters, because the first thing, if creativity came in a tube or box or jar, and you looked on the box to see the ingredients, the active ingredient in creativity is inspiration. So the inspiration for these two pieces came from my daughters, De'Ara and Serena. When I played the first song for her, De'Ara, my oldest daughter, she said, "Daddy, you should call that When the Sun Shines, because it sounds happy." And the next song was peaceful, so the inspiration for that was Serena, because she's calm and serene.
Nice.
So it's usually, just whatever inspires you.
Right.
Because the thing about jazz is spontaneous creativity. So you have to pick up inspiration at the moment and take that and just, like Dizzy Gillespie would say, taking a what and putting it where. So I take all these whats and hope that I can find a place to put them.
And did you name the song after your daughter told you to name it?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, When the Sun Shines, I sure do.
What about your recordings? Are there recordings that people can find of yours, or written music, or are there projects that you worked on like that, or are working on like that? Can you let us know what those are?
Well, there's a project I did in collaboration with a guitarist from Charlotte. His name is David Cardle, and we did the project was called To the Top, and it was a flute album. It featured me, and I wrote several of the songs on that. But he wrote some songs for me. It was written especially for me.
I would love to get that.
Yeah, and so it's available, and as a matter of fact, I can make sure you get a copy of that. Okay. It's got some nice stuff on it.
Great.
And I play, I've done things with other people. I even had a chance to play with the Police. When they were disbanding, I was in New York visiting a friend of mine, and we went to the studio to hang out. And they asked me if I could play saxophone. I think they thought I was a country boy, and they wanted to just have some fun in the studio. And so they said, "Well, we heard you play flute, but can you play sax?"
Right.
And they told me what the pay scale was, and I said, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." So they said, "Do you want to play the alto, the tenor, or do you want to play the baritone?" I said, "Well, let me play the baritone, because that might be the easiest part." So they said, "Why don't you play the tenor?" And I did, and I was too stubborn or whatever, or God was with me. I made it through. We did one rehearsal, and they knew all the parts. So I was playing catch up, but I did it, and so that was an album that it was actually what it was. It was the horn section that played with the Police.
What is the name of that one? Do you remember it? And this stuff is available now on Amazon.
This is. I'm trying to think of the name of it. I know it was on. Atlantic Records.
Okay, well you're coming back anyway. We're going to do this again because we can only get so much this time. Who is there out there that you
Busted Out? Busted Out. That's the name.
Oh, Busted Out. Okay, great, great. I think I might remember that.
Perhaps.
The Police, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was the horn section from the Police, and we had a song. Sting was supposed to sing one of the songs on it, but something irregular happened, and they turned the song into an instrumental. That's why it wasn't as famous as it could have been.
Oh, man.
True story.
Well, we're going to take a listen and hear another piece of yours, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Let's do that.
And then we'll be right back.
Okay.
you.
Oh, you're so kind.
You know I've followed you around a lot, so I love to hear you play, right? Right. Well, we want to just find out a few more things about you this time, and then we're going to ask you to come back again, because there's so much we can't cover it all in one show. But is there anyone out there that you've always wanted to play with that you haven't had a chance to play with, but if you could, you would take that opportunity?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to be under the direction of Quincy Jones in the Color Purple, and I played with B.B. King. We did a CBS miniseries, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. I was playing a harmonica in the B.B. King band. But
wait, before you leave that now, and you were the sax player in the
I was one of the sax players
in the juke joint.
Yes,
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And
Color Purple.
But the person to answer your question, it would be Herbie Hancock. I'd love to be, to perform with Herbie Hancock.
Well, hopefully you will get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, he's still around. He's one of my favorite pianists.
Wow. I don't think you're the only person who probably feels that way, but I think you're probably the person who has an opportunity maybe that you'll get that done. So hopefully
I hope so.
Can you just tell us what you think about the state of the art right now, especially here in Charlotte, North Carolina? What would you like to see in terms of the music scene for artists and for jazz and for what would you like to see? And then also any advice you have for upcoming artists?
I would like to see more brotherhood or camaraderie, because sometimes you have little pockets of individuals that it's like they want to keep the art to themselves, or it's not as inclusive, and we don't. And I'd love to see the music community. It's coming. It's a lot better than it was. But you still have little pockets, especially when some of the outsiders come in, and it's like, well, this is our jazz. We're bringing something down here, and John Coltrane and those folks were born in North Carolina.
Right.
Dizzy Gillespie, right across from Laurinburg and Sherrod, South Carolina.
Right.
So the Heath brothers, and it goes on and on.
So people who don't know the local scene but come to sort of.
Well, sometimes they come to educate us,
right,
and it becomes a miseducation. So those kind of things. So I just like to see more and that's what I like about music education.
Right.
Because the whole idea is African-oriented rhythm expressing itself through the United States conditions. And that's my definition of jazz. And there's so many different conditions of the United States.
I love that. And I know that's what you taught when you taught at the Afro-American Culture Center, right? That perspective. It's really kind of an Afrocentric perspective, I think.
Well, actually, because jazz is American music. It started in America. It has influences from Africa, but it's not African. It is American. So it's African-oriented rhythm expressing itself through the United States conditions, like horns, that European horns, and through some of the European structures that have been stylized to express what the musicians were, their particular talents.
What would you say to an up-and-coming artist in terms of how to get involved in sort of the music scene, but with an understanding of really what's gone on before? How does that happen? Are there what advice would you give, I guess, to up-and-coming artists here?
The person to listen, and then when you decide which way you want to go, practice, and then practice again.
Okay, from the mouth of the expert, thank you so much for joining us, Michael Porter. We do need to have you come back, and we need to talk
I'd
some
love
more.
to.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been UpFront, and we hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time.